Hello everyone, this is Watchtower X here, and for today I want to talk about time invested in the world of Jehovah's Witnesses. From my infancy to my leaving the Jehovah's Witness routine, to my full indoctrination, to my awakening, I can't say I've fully believed in every single doctrine or talking point. There are times where there are things that bothered me and I would just bury it in the back of my head, or there were just other beliefs that I just could not come to terms with. But there was always one thing that I strove to try to keep up with and always failed in. And the reason why I kept trying was because I thought this was the one true religion, the truth. And this thing that I struggled with was sacrifice. To explain, Jehovah's Witnesses need a lot of time. There's the midweek meeting, there's the weekend meeting, and then you have to prepare for those meetings. So basically you have to read through all the parts, and for the weekend meeting there's the Watchtower that you have to prepare for ahead of time. And then there's personal study, and there is, of course, the field service arrangement, and then there is family worship, and there's personal study. If you're an elder or ministerial servant, then you also have your other privileges, quote unquote, that you have to attend to. And of course, even if you aren't an elder ministerial servant, if you are exemplary, then you have time that you have to spend preparing for your parts if you have a part coming up for a meeting. Let's actually break down how much time per week one would be expected to spend on spiritual things. Let's just pick an average below Joe who wants to not arise suspicion from the elders, so he spends 10 hours a month out in the field service. So if we were to break down time spent on a weekly basis, for service that would be 2.5 hours. And then we have studying for the meetings. So for argument's sake, let's just make that half an hour each, even though it would definitely take a lot more than half an hour to get through the materials, especially the midweek meeting. And then we have the daily text. The daily text, for those who do not know, is a scripture that is given as the theme for the day. And under the scripture, there's a paragraph which describes the scripture in a way. So basically, there's a scripture, and then there's a small paragraph taken from the Watchtower that you would read each and every day. This would be something you could read through in under a minute, maybe a minute or something. Usually it's very brief, but with the whole meditation thing going on, let's say it would take you 5 minutes. And then you have your daily Bible reading, which for the most part, you could say just a couple chapters, but again, Watchtower is saying that you have to meditate on the things you're reading, and you have to think about the situation and how the characters felt and all this nonsense. So 5 minutes again. Then you have personal study, which is expected for a 10-hour blowjo, but let's just say he only spends 1 hour a week doing so. And then you have the actual meetings, which are 1 hour and 40 minutes each if you're lucky. And if you're unlucky like me, you'll have the conductor go over half an hour. And one time he's gone 50 minutes over. Yes, 50 minutes. And you also have to consider the time spent getting ready for the meetings. So let's add 20 minutes each for those. Now we have all this information, and if we compact all of that time, let's see what we get. We are looking at 8.5 hours a week minimum just being a Jehovah's Witness, just keeping up. And I always felt like that was so draining just to keep up. But aside from all those things you have to do, they also expect you to go on jw.org like it's a social media app. Get caught up with all the news, check out the new videos, watch the broadcast. There's so much time that you have to spend doing all this JW stuff. This all adds to the pressure of finding a job that allows one to do these things without one of them being hindered. In my personal experience, I've had a job where I had to work the evenings, so I would get home at 10 o'clock, but on Wednesdays, I would have to start work at 6 o'clock so that I would start my midweek meeting on time. And I had another job where I had to kind of negotiate and be able to take off early on Wednesday so that I could make the midweek meeting. And I ended up quitting that job because they expected me to work weekends as a regular shift. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And I quit. And I didn't have a job for a couple months until, actually, how long did I not have a job? Let's see, July, August, September, October, November, December. So pretty much I went half a year without an actual job. But no, it wasn't exactly that, because I actually went to school in between that time. So in reality, I did go half a year without a job, but at the same time, I was going to school, and then I got a job after I finished school. So in this way, you can say I didn't have a job, but at the same time, I was doing something. So it wasn't like I wasn't using my time for any kind of gain, but the reality is I was auxiliary pioneering throughout my time where I wasn't going to school or working, so there was still that. Let me see, was there anything else? So there was that job too. I mean, I ended up, after going to school and getting my next job, my job was, it wasn't very consistent schedule. It was 4 on, 4 off. So I ended up having to work on the weekends too, but thankfully, well, I guess I would say only thankfully at the time for me, I was able to kind of get out of my workplace and still attend meetings, even though I kind of had my shift at that time, because I was the only person working at that shift, and the weekends were a very, very chill time. There was times where I would just sit in the office and just go on YouTube and watch videos because there's actually nothing to do. But I was just stressed out by the fact that every single time there was a weekend, I would have to think about what time I would be able to leave work just to be able to make the meetings. And it was getting pretty close to the convention, and looking at my schedule, I did not have the week of the convention off. And that was giving me extreme anxiety to the point where I was just praying every single day. And I had a friend who told me about a job that would be a better career path, I guess you could say, because At that point I was at, I really didn't like the job that I was working at. It was giving me stress outside of the whole times schedule thing. So I did end up quitting that job before the convention and currently working at the company I'm with right now. I can't complain schedule wise about the company I work for right now, but I did have some moments where I had to work Saturdays, and this was not that big of a deal at the time until I moved to a different congregation. So this new congregation was looking to transition from having the Sunday meetings switch to Saturday, so that Saturday would be the meeting time and Sunday would be the weekend field service arrangement. This I felt was not a particularly good move and a decision that was based off of selfish desires as opposed to a more rational, considerate decision. And I might sound a bit I guess paranoid and sound like I'm trying to say some sort of conspiracy or whatnot, but I think my suspicions were confirmed, and allow me to explain. So the situation was like this. We moved into the new congregation, and the first thing we were to do was vote as to whether we wanted the meetings to be on Sunday or if we wanted to vote on it being Saturday. So of course, if this decision is being made, or if this is even being brought up, then you can already have an idea that majority of the publishers want to switch the day to Saturday. But regardless, there were people from different parts of the territory coming together into one new congregation, so of course there would have to be a vote. And to give you a little background as to how this decision would impact us, on Sundays we had our own parking space. So this is a double Kingdom Hall, which means there's a left wing and a right wing, but on Sundays, on the time that we were going to meetings, we had the whole building to ourselves, so we can park wherever we wanted and didn't have to worry about coming early just to secure parking space, because there was no parking in that Kingdom Hall. Compare that to Saturday, where we would have to come in at the peak time. There would be people coming and going for different reasons because this was a busy Kingdom Hall. So essentially so we had to park outside. There was probably a congregation's worth, so about let's say like 30-40 vehicles just parking somewhere along the streets because there was no space to park inside the facility. So we had to park along the streets because it's the busiest time of the week, you could say, for the Kingdom Hall. But that was only because we added to that extra body count for that day, for that time. So we were inserting ourselves into this situation just because people wanted to have the meeting on Saturday. It wasn't because we needed to do it, it was because we wanted to do it. So the vote comes in, and to my dismay and to the dismay of many others, the decision was made to have the meetings on Saturday. And I can remember there's one girl who cheered after hearing the decision, but then she quickly covered her mouth when she realized how much tension there was in the air. There was so much tension. You can just feel it on your skin, and your like little pieces of hair just popping up, and you could just feel the atmosphere. I was obviously livid, and I could see many others who felt this way, because this adds on to the stress, the fact that they had to figure out how to work around the schedule. They have to find out how to take time off Saturdays. Some would have to work night shift, and then they would have to get up super early, for them anyways, just to make the meetings. Others had to have their own panic attacks because of the fact that they work Saturdays. For me, I was stressed out too, because I knew that I would have to get rotated in on Saturday shifts. And so there's that. And you want to know what the funny thing is? After all of this, there would be older sisters that would be talking to the elders, and they would say like, oh, I got up for the field service, but there was nobody there. So after this, people were using this as a reason to go to the meetings on Saturday and perhaps go out for service right after the meeting and whatnot, but take the Sunday as a day to just rest up and do whatever. So that was the purpose of having the meeting on Saturday, so that Sunday you can just do whatever you want. And to no surprise, soon enough, like, I mean, 1 or 2 weeks kind of thing, we had a local needs. And to explain what a local needs is, it's basically a part in the midweek meeting where an elder discusses a topic that needs to be addressed in the congregation. Guess what this local needs was about? You just take a guess. It was about the importance of going to the Sunday field service arrangement. Exactly. That was pretty big for me. It was like, seriously, you guys wanted to do this, and now you're seeing that attendance for service is going down, so you have to address the congregation about the importance of going out on Sunday. You can already see what the true motive was behind the decision being made. And that's why I say I don't think my suspicions about the intentions of the switch are far-fetched. It's honestly just found all of this to be stressful. The added fact that I had to again work on making my schedule around the spiritual routine, trying to constantly convince my employers to work with my inflexible demands. So I felt that this was adding to my burden, as opposed to the teachings or the doctrine saying that all these spiritual routines will lighten my burden. It just felt like the opposite of what we were supposed to gain by immersing ourselves in this religion. The Watchtower seems to put out these videos that show people of faith quitting their jobs, spending time suffering, but using this time to go out and auxiliary pioneer and then magically find a job that suits their schedule. They're always pushing this out. There's lots of videos on it, and this seems to be their justification, that things will just magically work out if you put kingdom interests first. If you have no job, spend that time auxiliary pioneering and you'll find the best job in no time. Well, people wouldn't be in such a situation if it weren't for the demanding schedule in the first place. There's another justification that they give in regards to this, and it's my most hated scripture. It's at 1 John chapter 5 verse 3, which says, "For this is what the love of God means, that we observe his commandments, and yet his commandments are not burdensome." Whenever I heard this scripture from a speaker, they will always refer to this scripture when pointing to the importance of certain procedures or doctrines. It's just so weak-hearted to say, well, these commandments are not burdensome because there's a scripture that says so. So do you expect us who have to quit our jobs to find another job that not only pays the bills, but also has the inflexible schedule that we desire to match? And to say, oh yeah, this isn't a burden at all. I wish brother speaker had told me this in the first place. Honestly, it's just like there's no rationality behind it. Just because these words were written in ink or whatever kind of writing, that doesn't mean that it's just going to be magically true. And this is a psychological tactic that makes one feel that they should blame themselves for the trouble they're in, rather than admitting to the fact that there's too much time being required as a Jehovah's Witness. They want the individual to say that they are at fault for not making the proper adjustments in their lives to be an exemplary Jehovah's Witness. If you're not, or don't have the desire to make these changes, you're viewed as spiritually weak and will most likely be soft shunned. As Jehovah's Witnesses are very judgmental, within the congregation, people will see these things and make assertions based on any observations they make. Many have it good not being able to be in such a situation, so don't consider how stressful it is to have to make such a life-impacting decision. It's an exception, or it's an expectation that you would quit your job and find another one with Jehovah's help. The reality is, a burden is something that an individual bears. It's not something that requires a perspective. Imagine how easy it would be for those who carry any kind of loads to be told, oh, it's not so burdensome, and then magically lose the feeling of anxiety or burden. Words don't change reality, and I believe that a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses have a hard time understanding that. This is what happens when you use faith as the basis for all beliefs and aspects of your life. If you have faith that God will reward you for doing all these things by sacrificing your time and energy, why wouldn't you do such things? Why would you allow reality to form the truth? Well, Watchtower has an answer to this, and it's found in the 1991 October 15th Watchtower, page 21, titled, "Let us also put off every weight." There's a quote from a sister that reads here in the heading, "I am so sad and discouraged," lamented Mary, referring to a load of Christian responsibilities. This Christian woman added, "I see friends experiencing burnout. I too feel the tiredness and the stress. Please help me to understand why." Guess how they first addressed this issue? You know what? Let's read this whole paragraph here. The scripture makes it clear that Jehovah has not placed unreasonable demand on us. The Apostle John said that God's commandments are not burdensome. Jesus similarly told his followers, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am mild-tempered and lowly in heart. You will find refreshment for your souls. For my yoke is kindly and my load is light." Clearly, It is not Jehovah's will that we feel overburdened or loaded down in our service to him. And then they proceed to reference 1 John 5 and 3. Again, just because it says so in a book, that doesn't automatically negate the situation a person is in. They say, well, Jesus said that his way is refreshing and light and kindly, and he's mild-tempered and so awesome, and clearly the burden isn't coming from Jehovah. The rest of the article proceeds to express ways one could remove the burdens that they've placed on themselves. Of course, they aren't going to say that their arbitrary rules are the root cause. And I just want to add one more subheading that I found to be the exact problem I'm talking about. And this paragraph goes on to say, take for example the matter of secular work. In many lands, economic conditions may leave a Christian with little choice but to work long hours. Often, though, people take on work merely to get ahead or to accumulate luxuries. By reevaluating their actual needs, some Christians have found it wise to make adjustments in their employment situation. Now, this was the case with Debbie and her husband, both of whom are Jehovah's Witnesses. She says, "Our financial situation has changed, and there was no longer a real need for me to continue working full-time, but it was hard to give it up. So soon, she began to feel the pressure of having too much to do. She explains, Saturday was my only free day to do housework. Often I just didn't feel like going out in field service. I feel bad about this. My conscience bothered me. Yet I loved my job. Finally, I had to face reality. There was only one solution. I quit the job. Admittedly, such a major adjustment may not be possible for some. However, a careful examination of your work schedule may reveal the need for certain changes. There may be other ways of relieving ourselves of unnecessary burdens. What about reducing the frequency of our pleasure travel, sports activity, or other entertainment, including times spent watching television? And even after achieving a desired balance in these areas, constant readjustment may be required to maintain such balance. It couldn't possibly be a lifestyle associated with being a Jehovah's Witness. The root problem is pleasure travel, sports, entertainment, or watching TV. It's not that you're working a full-time job and spending at minimum 8.5 hours a week being a Jehovah's Witness that adds to the burden. No. It's spending time doing recreational activities that's causing anxiety. Sure, Watchtower, tell people that that's the problem. Well, I guess Samuel Hurd already reiterated that recently.
Can mundane activity be replaced with theocratic activity? What do you see? Is your best good enough? It may be, it may not.